Hi, I'm Jack Canfield, author of The Success Principles and co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And I'm here today at the Author Success Retreat that I do with Steve Harrison. I want to introduce you to one of our attendees, James M. Porfido. Now, Jim is a criminal defense attorney and former chief prosecutor of sex crimes, child abuse, and vehicular homicide. And he was certified as a criminal trial attorney by the Supreme Court of New Jersey in 1995. And he has over 35 years of criminal trial experience, which is, I just admire all that. I almost went to law school and didn't. So I admire what you've done with your career. So Jim, talk about, you have a common myth that people believe about criminal justice system that you talk about. Share that with us.
Thank you so much, Jack, for having me. And I want to apologize in advance for my voice. It's a little bit raspy. I've got some nodules on my vocal cords that have to be surgically removed. So my voice is not up to speed, but thanks anyway. And I do appreciate the question. It's a great question. And as a former prosecutor and then later on becoming a criminal defense attorney and practicing many years as a criminal defense attorney, I saw that the scales of justice had tipped very much so, and that the idea of justice being fair, Lady Justice, the vision that people have of the statue of Lady Justice blindfolded with the scales of justice being even, was not quite the case. And I found that out really as I became a defense attorney. And I saw that the scales of justice were really unfairly tipped in favor of the state. And I really came to that realization when I moved from one side of the courtroom to the other side of the courtroom, simply by moving from the prosecutor's counsel table to the defense counsel table. I felt that being next to the jury as a prosecutor, they so much wanted to believe the evidence in the case was overwhelming, and they wanted the bad guy or bad girl to be punished. As a defense attorney, I learned that this concept of equal justice was not really so. Everyone is guaranteed constitutional rights. And I discuss some of these stories in my book, Unequal Justice. I go into great detail about prosecution cases as well as defense cases. And I talk about how those scales of justice, really that idea, the concept, the constitutional right of being innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, is not necessarily so. In the eyes of the court, the eyes of the prosecutor, you're guilty until you're proven innocent. And it's a very difficult obstacle or hurdle to overcome. But we're all guaranteed constitutional rights and protections, and everyone walking into that courtroom should be treated fairly and equally under the law. And that's not quite the case that I found to be in my years of experience.
Well, in your book on equal justice, you talk about, as that shifted, one of the things that happens is people are not getting bail. They're not getting out of prison. They're being incarcerated until the trial. And what happens is the lawyers, just keep, the prosecutors just keep dragging it out, hoping they're going to basically bankrupt the client and you, and then they'll do a plea deal. Can you just expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. And I found that to be the case. And certainly later on in my career, dealing with a lot of high profile cases, people pay a private attorney a retainer, and you work off of that retainer. And I think at some point the prosecutor realizes that, the more we wear down the defense attorney, the more court appearances, the less that retainer is going to continue to be. And at some point they're looking to get your client to be bankrupted. They run out of money. They know that at some point they're going to have to accept a plea deal. And if you have a client that's incarcerated during this time, and during the advent of bail reform, the Criminal Justice Reform Act in New Jersey, and it happened all over the country, quite frankly, is that there were no more cash bails. People were being held, and they were being held until their day in court. And it became very unfair. You had to fight aggressively and very hard and passionately to get your clients released. Prosecutors knew that, judges knew that, and yet your clients would sit in jail until they finally got that day in court. And ultimately, those unnecessary court appearances might result in you making an application to the court to say, I can no longer stay in this case. My client cannot fund this litigation. Very unfair. And people would run out of money, and it happened all too much. And I experienced that so many times and felt that the scales were moving dramatically in favor of the state, especially in light of that situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love your book. As I was reading it, I couldn't stop turning the pages. I actually got mad at you one night because I wanted to go to sleep and I couldn't stop reading. So it's like there's a lot of stories where you illustrate the cases on both sides when you were a prosecutor and later when you were a criminal defense lawyer. And I think that it's a great read and it's a wake up call for all of us. I think a lot of times our freedoms are being eroded and we don't quite realize it. And I call you one of the good guys who's out there trying to make a difference. And so thank you for your work.
Thank you so much, Jack.
And here's where you can get more information about Jim and his work and his book, Unequal Justice. And his website will be there. So check it out.